We're on with Dr. Thomas Sowell, and we're talking about his new book, The Thomas Sowell Reader, and it's available at your bookstores everywhere. Tom, one topic that we've talked about for a very, very long time, the minimum wage. Now, you can find that the labor unions want a minimum wage, and they spend millions and millions of dollars lobbying for increasing minimum wage because they reduce some of their competition in the labor market. But there are many people out there who are good people, and they also support the minimum wage. How can you possibly explain the people with polar opposite interests coming up with the same policy?
Well, I think a great deal of the blame belongs on the economics profession, because outside of economics, most people, even most faculty members at leading universities, have no conception of the minimum wage. They simply think, it'll raise the pay of people who are at the bottom, and that's a good thing. Well, what it really does, as you pointed out, probably more so than a whole lot of other people, is that it prices low-skilled, inexperienced people out of a job.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when I was a teenager, I had my first job. I thought my boss was very harsh. In retrospect, I don't know how the man put up with my incompetence. I certainly wouldn't put up with anybody who was that incompetent. But he was paying me some very low rate. If he had to hire me at the rate for an experienced adult worker, there's no way in the world he would have wasted his money like that.
That's absolutely right. And the same thing was with me. I've worked since I was 12 years old at all kinds of jobs, caddying on golf courses, delivering mail during the Christmas holiday, and many, many jobs. And if there were a high minimum wage, I might not have had those jobs. And the early work experiences that kids have teaches them things that go well beyond a little bit of money that they can earn. Things like, well, you come to work Thursday even though you got paid Wednesday. You can't spit in the foreman's face and still keep your job. And many young people growing up in poor households and going to rotten schools, they don't have the opportunity to learn things while they're young and make mistakes while they're young that will make them a more valuable employee in the future.
Oh, absolutely. I think the loss of the job, the biggest loss when you price teenagers out of a job is not the little bit of money they could have made. It's the experience on the job, doing things that we take for granted, when we're middle-aged, not realizing how long it took before many of us finally got it when we were teenagers.
Yeah.
My gosh, I probably cost the poor man I work for money. I know I cost him money because I would cause the beer to explode in the cooler.
So he was really giving you charity.
Again, I was very indignant at the time when he chewed me out. I said, anybody can make a mistake. Mm-hmm. Actually, I made that same mistake more than once.
And also what people don't realize is, aside from destroying job opportunities, the minimum wage law has been and continues to be one of the most effective tools in the arsenal of racists everywhere around the world.
Oh, absolutely. And again, you would know this from having been in South Africa during the apartheid era, that the white labor unions wanted minimum wage laws and equal pay for equal work, not because they wanted to help blacks, but because they wanted to price blacks out of a job and keep the jobs for themselves.
That is absolutely right. And you see, I think in 1975, a white laborer on a construction project, he was getting $1.91 an hour, and a black laborer would do the same job for 39 cents an hour. Uh-huh. So there's a lot of incentive for contractors to disobey the job reservation laws and hire blacks because they just, it was a lower cost. And
that, of course, was the thing behind the Davis-Bacon Act in 1931, that black construction workers from the South were coming up north, and the construction companies were underbidding the local unionized labor to get contracts because they had non-union labor from the South. And, of course, the law then priced blacks out of a job.
That's right. Yeah, right. And matter of fact, if you look at the congressional testimony during that time, Congressman Allgood from, I believe it's Alabama or Georgia, he said, see that contractor over there? He uses cheap colored labor and puts them in cabins, and his labor of that sort that's in competition with white America today Of course, the rhetoric behind today's support of the Davis-Bacon Act has changed, but the effects are the same. That is, the Davis-Bacon Act tends to discriminate against non-union labor, and most blacks in construction are in the non-union sector.
One of the things that I think most people have no inkling of, and the media never tells them, is during the period of the late 1940s, when the national minimum wage law was passed in 1938. In the 1940s, you had runaway inflation, so that by the late 40s, even an unskilled worker was making a higher pay than the minimum wage law required. So in other words, the minimum wage law had, for all practical purposes, been repealed by inflation. And at that time, unemployment rates for black teenagers were a fraction of what they were at any time since then. Because in 1950, they started increasing the minimum wage to catch up with inflation and spread the coverage. And that's when you got these double-digit unemployment rates for black teenagers, even during the height of prosperity.
Oh, that's right. And today, I think black teenage unemployment is 55%. And back in 1948, black teenage unemployment was less than white teenage unemployment. Namely, it was, I think, 9.2 compared to 10.1.
Yeah, but I mean, we haven't seen those kinds of low unemployment rates for teenagers, in the past half century.
That's right, and it's because of labor market restrictions. In addition to the minimum wage laws, things like various labor laws to keep kids safe. That is, my cousin and I, when we were 13, 14 years old, when there's a snowstorm, we would shove off train platforms for the Reading Railroad Company. Well, the unions don't want to see a kid getting $30 for a job that they can get $100, and so they're able to use laws and various regulations to deny that opportunity.
The other thing is that if you even talk about reducing the child labor laws, people are horrified, and we talk about kids going into coal mines and so on. At one time, that was a real issue. Today, we have big, strapping black teenagers who are not allowed to work in air-conditioned offices because they're too young. Well, I don't think anything is going to happen in an air-conditioned office that's going to do them any harm, and a lot that'll do them some good.
That's right. Now, let me kind of wind up by saying that I think the major message that you've been trying to put across through a lot of your writings is that reality is not optional.
Yes, that's right.
But we try to pretend you can take it or leave it, but that's not the case.